Okay, folks, welcome. I'd like to go ahead and get started. I'm going to give the Dragonflow project update. If you're familiar with Dragonflow, you probably don't know me. I'm not a contributor to Dragonflow. I'm a colleague of the contributors. We work on the same team. I've presented Dragonflow at meetups several times, and I've used Dragonflow in some of my own projects. The contributors couldn't be here, so they asked me to give the presentation in their place. So let's go ahead. So if you are here out of curiosity, just very quickly, Dragonflow is an SDN with a neutron driver, a neutron plugin. And its goal was to build a very simple but scalable and flexible SDN. Okay, so if you want to know more about Dragonflow, we've got other presentations and so on, and the slides will show you. We'll provide resources later. But my goal is really to just give the project update on sort of what we've done since Pike. So this slide was presented at the last summit. Okay, so the team was able to do a bunch of stuff in the Pike cycle, but our resources have been scaled down significantly since. So the new cycle has far fewer features, and I'll talk a little bit about the resource allocation to the project later. But basically, there are two major features in the Queens cycle: Skydive Integration and application decoupling, plus some fixes to the Vagrant setup. Okay? And I'll go back later and show you some of the features that we talked about doing during the last summit that are in progress but not complete, and we need help finishing. So Skydive integration. So Skydive is a tool. I've provided some links at the bottom to help you visualize and debug and maintain your network. And it has plugins so that network vendors like projects like Dragonflow can add information to the dashboard and to the tools to help you debug. So you can actually visualize the Dragonflow topology, and you can actually trace a packet, or you can trace a simulated packet through the topology. This is not a great screenshot. The colors are off, but basically, you can visualize the parts, the local topology, so what's on what we call a chassis, what's on a hypervisor. So we're seeing here some tap interfaces, and on the right, you see some of the logical topology as well that the Dragonflow database uses. So there is a search box, and you can refine and highlight parts of the topology. So I won't be demoing this, but it's really cool, the simulation and so on. So I encourage you to go take a look on the Dragonflow project page. The other thing I wanted to talk about and give you a little bit more detail about is this idea of application decoupling. So I'm just going to skip to the next slide for a second. So when we talk about Dragonflow, we usually show this slide to show that Dragonflow has an agent, a controller that runs. Dragonflow is a distributed SDN. It has a controller that runs on every hypervisor, and it talks to OpenFlow. Via OpenFlow, controls Open vSwitch. And Dragonflow's goal was to be very, very configurable and flexible. So it's made up of all these applications. And applications have a corresponding unit of code up in the Neutron plugin. And the applications are pretty independent, or were pretty independent, except not exactly. So when they code the OpenFlow tables, they use hard-coded IDs. Any application can put a flow in any table. Any application can touch any OpenFlow register if they want to add state that will be carried through the tables along with a packet to be used later in a later table. And this meant that there was a kind of pretty tight coupling between applications, and not really as flexible as we intended as they intended when they started the project. So the goal of application decoupling is to have loosely coupled applications, so you can really drop an application in, a new application in, and not worry that you're going to ruin the logic of some other application, you're going to use the wrong table, and so on. So before, this green line is showing you how we used to configure applications before. You just give a list of the applications you want to start, and when the controller starts up, it loads those applications. And those applications go ahead and create tables and create the initial flows that have to be there at the start. Instead now, the application will have a contract in which they talk about their entry points, their exit points, and registers that they need. And they can view things that way, and the registers are really, they can refer to registers by some ID, but really that ID will refer to something else in the background, such that there's no conflict between register usage between two applications. So if, for example, you want to define, this is part of a data path, a standard data path that we usually have a topology for the OpenFlow tables that is very commonly configured. This would be expressed with these vertices and those edges in a YAML file. So at application launch time, you deploy this YAML file to all your hypervisors. OK, so there's more. I won't go into more detail about the application decoupling. So now let's talk about the sort of more the bad news, let's say. So because resource utilization basically we're at about has been deallocated from the project, so we're at about 1 full-time dev. Okay, so that means that it's basically going to be in maintenance mode. The project will be in maintenance mode. Now the devs, they are still working on features. I'll show you in a second. They're still working on features, but they're not able to make hard commitments about when stuff will go into mainline. So in such an environment, it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to do tagging and release management. So we'll continue to take care of master branch and put features in there and so on. But it doesn't make sense for us to tag and release for now until the project becomes more popular or more resources are dedicated to it and so on. So these are things that were promised or discussed as for the Queens cycle during the last summit. Okay, this was in a Queens in a slide titled "What's Coming in Queens," something like that. Things that were started but not well enough funded, so they're sort of crawling along. Auto upgrade. So when you upgrade your MySQL database or your database in Neutron and OpenStack, there are scripts that will automatically update the models to the new version, right? If you're using MySQL and SQL Alchemy, then it would be Alembic. So Dragonflow has its own database. Okay, it can be any one of several. It could be etcd, it could be Zookeeper, and so on. Now it's able to auto upgrade. Okay, so that's a work in progress. It's working, but it's still a work in progress. So, but that's a nice feature from a management standpoint. We have OpenStack Ansible patches that are not yet committed. We wanted to sort of give you deployment tools, but we're not there yet. But there are patches if you want to look at them, and if this is important for you, please help us out. And the same for RPM packaging. Those kind of go together. The OSA use the RPM packages. And then the features that these big features we promised, LBAS and DNS, they're designed but not implemented. I'm missing one here, which is somehow I lost one. So the devs are involved with the Courier project as well. So in order to support Courier, so Courier, just for those of you who don't know, Courier seeks to give Kubernetes environments to give them Neutron SDN, Neutron-backed SDN, such that you can sort of use any of the Neutron providers of networking in your Kubernetes environment. Okay? And then if you are running Kubernetes on OpenStack, then you don't have to run 2 SDNs. You can just run one. It's not here, but that's also in progress. And then once you have that CNI driver for Courier, which it should be on this list, I'll fix the slides before I post them. Other things like network policy. Kubernetes now has network policy support. You get that for free because network policy is translated to security groups. Dragonflow already has security group support, so we're really just missing the CNI driver to connect containers to the Open vSwitch. And that's that's about it for my update. I've got slides on giving feedback. I'll point out that the contributors are still reviewing patches. They're still on the mailing list and on IRC. So happy to have a conversation with you, answer questions. They'll continue giving support. And there's a new contributor, Shahar Napiri, who is the dev who's working on Skydive. Let's see, anything else here? Okay, so contributing, it's the usual stuff. And that's it. That's my update. So questions? If not, I'll give you back some free time.